Welcome to the third Continuity Insights podcast. This podcast series runs each month, appearing first in our monthly digital magazine and later on our website. We are also working on a subscription service using iTunes that we hope to have available in the coming months. Information about upcoming podcasts will be made available on the Continuity Insights LinkedIn group or via our weekly CI Bulletin e-newsletter, which you can subscribe to at continuityinsights.com/subscribe. This month, we take a look at the role of the business continuity consultant and the challenges they face when working across different industries and companies. Joining me today is Mike Keating, a Continuity Insights Editorial Advisory Board member, VP of Business Continuity Management at Reinsurance Group of America, and former Managing Director at his own consulting company, Doulos Business Consulting. Thanks for joining us today, Mike.
Thanks, Luke. It's good to be here.
Now, you recently switched from running your own consulting business to the practitioner side of things. What was the single biggest change in your day-to-day responsibilities?
Well, there have been a lot of changes, but I think that the biggest by far has been, in the consulting world, you're never really able to own your effort for the long term. You're out there working on a project for a client, and you see things that ought to be done, and you realize that it's outside of your scope of work and you can't really do it. But now all of those problems that I come across are my problems, and they're not just my problems for a 12 or 25-week engagement. They're my problems for as long as I'm here. And so it gives me a chance not only to broaden what I do during the course of whatever initiative I'm working on, but also start to look into the future 3 and 5 years and see how do we want to get to where we think we ought to be in the long term. And that's just something you don't get in consulting.
Okay, we've had a few consultants submit questions for this podcast. The first question that was submitted asks, it starts with a statement. It says, often BC consultants are brought in after a disaster has already occurred to help make sure the impact isn't so great next time. These situations are typically charged with politics and hidden agendas, as someone has probably taken or been given the blame for not being well prepared. This will result in expectations or assumptions for the revised plan or its implementation, regardless of whether they are outlined in a project charter. So his question is, how can a consultant identify all the unspoken issues that are present in the organization, particularly if the culture of the organization is not a trusting one?
Well, I think regardless of when you're brought in, internal politics are going to be a landmine. And the reality is that if the client's bringing in a consultant in the first place, there's a good chance somebody has either dropped the ball somewhere or neglected the BCM program. So I think that's true both after an event that has not gone as well as they would have thought, or just if the event is something as simple as an audit report or some kind of a comment from an audit committee. These situations are always going to be emotionally charged, so it's smart to avoid conclusions early in the process. I know there have been several times in my career where people have asked me for an opinion very early in a client engagement before I could have all the facts, and it honestly never worked out for me well once when I let them press me for an early answer. The advantage of having time on the ground is that it not only helps you identify the actual root cause of the problem, but it gives you a lot better visibility into the politics. So about the worst thing you can do in an environment like that is try to match their untrusting political environment. The reality is that you're going to lose that game every time because they're just going to be better at it than you. It's their environment. And so to try to match wits with people who've operated in that for years and years is almost never smart. The adage that honesty is the best policy is true in most of those situations. You were hired for a reason. You need to let your hard work and integrity fight your battles for you. As you go the extra mile to make other people look successful, over time, those people are going to see your work on their behalf, and they'll be more open to guiding you through the office politics.
Now, Mike, I know you've mentioned to me in the past that you've worked for a lot of small businesses as a consultant, and you've also consulted at large Fortune 500 companies. How does the role of the BC consultant differ when working for a small business versus a large business?
Well, really, really small businesses rarely hire business continuity consultants. So as you get up into a little bit larger firms, I think that the smaller the company, the more likely you're going to be asked to do work outside the statement of work, and the more beneficial it is for you to do that. A lot of times, larger companies will try to get you to do work outside the going to work and then not want to pay you for it. Smaller companies just realize you're doing good work and they want your help in something else that they hadn't thought about at first. And as long as you can have some kind of informal arrangement to make sure that you're paid for those situations, it works out really well. Smaller companies tend to be less regimented, and that gives you lots of opportunities to learn what really makes them tick as opposed to just what people are telling you. And it gives you much more opportunity to interact with senior leaders regularly. It's not uncommon in a large firm to get with the very senior leadership once or twice during an engagement, but it's pretty unusual to have coffee with them 2 or 3 times a week. With a smaller firm, you can do that all the time. Smaller firms don't have staff dedicated to business continuity, so they're much more likely to lean on your expertise and perspective, and really just to take it as kind of gospel. And that might seem like it's a great thing, and sometimes it is, but the reality is that it can be a double-edged sword, because, just to steal a line from Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility. And the more somebody trusts you unilaterally, the harder it is to live up to those expectations.
All right. As a self-employed consultant, the business really does rely on getting their name out there and selling themselves to potential clients. Our next reader question touches on this concept of marketing yourself. He asks, do you find that speaking engagements are an effective means to promote your expertise, and will they translate into client engagements? If not, what did you find were the most effective ways to market yourself and your business?
Well, I think it's something of a myth to think that good marketing will result in engagements. Good marketing will only produce opportunities to have engagements. The only way to get engagements is for people to believe that you're going to solve their problem. And that is much more than just marketing and getting your name out there. The single best way to get client engagements is to do good work. Good work on the project that you're hired for, regardless of its size, provides all kinds of benefits. It shows your current client that you're there to work, not to sell the next project. That's a big rap of large consulting firms. A guy once tell me, our job here is to penetrate and radiate. They just wanted to get engagements that got them involved in the client organization so that they could spread out and do more things and sell more projects. That drives clients bananas. So you want to go and do really good work on what you're hired to do. The next thing is it makes the client more likely to promote you to others, either voluntarily, which has happened to me lots of times, or by being willing to be a reference when you ask them to be, and it gives you better and more compelling war stories to tell future prospects. The more engaged you are in doing work well, the more little things that you're going to stumble on that are going to be helpful. So let's reframe the question to the best way to get opportunities and whether speaking engagements are one of them. I think speaking engagements can help, but only if they're a reflection of the marketplace's confidence in you. So there are some people who speak every year at conferences that I wouldn't hire to wash my car because their invitation is more related to tradition or their marketing spend than actual competence. Speaking engagements are helpful if you know your message and your key audience. And like any marketing, the tighter your message and your target audience, the more effective it's going to be. So what's an example for that? Well, I've made my way through the consulting world basically on 2 kinds of projects, and I realize we all do all kinds of projects, but my bread and butter have been 2 things. Projects for very senior leadership that required a broad understanding of lots of different areas like legal, public relations, the business side, logistics, technology, all of that kind of wrapped up into one. And then larger projects for very global organizations where I'm going to have to be either myself all over the world or leading teams all over the world. For that reason, I never made any real effort to speak at some trade shows that would compete with the Continuity Insight show because those people, frankly, don't run big global organizations and they're not senior leaders. And so it would be pointless for me to speak there. I could get invited there every year if I wanted to, twice a year, but it's pointless for me to do that. Continuity Insights has the kind of people that I want to meet. So Continuity Insights is a venue where I'll want to speak at, and I'll work harder to make sure that I'm there. Places like RIMS, which is the Risk and Insurance Management Society, or FEI, the Financial Executives Institute, are also very helpful for me because that's where I'm finding those kind of people. And I found that as my career progressed, I became a lot more selective in where I went, knowing that most of the opportunities to speak were going to be a complete waste of time for me. To me, in terms of the best way to get opportunities and hopefully engagements, it comes right back to doing good work for clients. As you do good work, people will tell others about you, and word of mouth then becomes your most effective way to get business. If you can get current and past clients to talk about you to people who need your services, you'll get opportunities and engagements every time.